Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 50 of the Lord Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. Today, we are going to be looking at UFC 326, which is headlined by Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira in their rematch for the BMF title. As always, I am Will. I'm based in the UK, and I am joined by Dom in the US and Josh in Australia. So, as always, I guess before we start breaking down the fights in a little bit more detail, I guess we should take a general overlook at the card. How's everybody feeling about this one? I feel like there's been some back and forth. Some people are happy, some people are not happy about this card. I guess the overall quality is kind of in question. What do you guys think? Are either of you feeling a particular certain way about the prelims on this one? Or, yeah, what do you guys think?
I feel like in any card that has like Cody Brundage in it, kind of stains the card. He's like in a really bad way, a cancer that makes the card look like shit. Like you could have all great fighters on this card, but as soon as you see like Brundage there, it just turns it down a whole lot, right? Like I can't see this fight or this event in general being too exciting until the top five, the main card. The prelims are all a snooze fest. I mean, Ricky Tercios, Dante Johnson is a can crusher. We'll get into all of this probably later on. I'm not too sure, but overall, this entire card is sadder than a puppy being kicked. So that's my thoughts. Dom?
Yeah, I agree about the Brundage statement. I don't know how he's here again, but I guess they're trying to get rid of him once and for all, right? Because he's taken on a guy who fought a heavyweight, who's come down to middleweight. So potentially that it could be the last of Brundage, last we see of him. But yeah, overall, I think that we have a decent main card, but as you alluded to, Josh, it's pretty low quality, but beneath the main card, and I think that's why we're going to focus on the main card for this discussion. Should we get into the main event?
Yep, sounds good.
So this is a great main event. I think, Will, you've done a bit of analysis on this. Do you want to go first?
Absolutely. Let me just get a yawn out of the way. Yeah, I'm quite confident in a side here, I think. These are two guys that I've been a huge fan of for their entire UFC careers. I remember when Max Holloway was just a young kid and was always touted as somebody who was special and had a lot of potential. And I also remember when Charles Oliveira was a complicated flake who had really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu but no striking and no heart. So we've come a long way. Both guys are absolute like staple parts of the division. Have delivered some of the most exciting moments that we've seen in MMA over the past 10, 15 years. It's been a privilege to watch them fight, and it's been ages since they've locked horns, because obviously this is a rematch. So I feel like this is an entirely like unique fight, despite the fact that we've already seen it. It's been so much has happened since then. But when I say so much has happened, I think we are kind of at the point where both men are on the downward trajectory in their overall careers. I mean, it's been so long that's not really a shock to say. But I think that one man is traveling downwards in a steeper way, and that is Charles Oliveira. For all of the improvements that he's made with his striking, I think he's now kind of starting to see it become a curse and not a blessing, because he's so much more keen and willing to engage in the striking that he forgets what actually makes him great. When you think about his title run and the incredible surge that he had getting himself all the way to the top, his striking developed on the fly. But when he got to the sort of top 15, top 10, it was his grappling that actually got him to the belt. When he faced Tony Ferguson, when he faced Kevin Lee, those were two fights that people, I guess, were kind of shocked that he won at the time. It was his grappling that got him there. The Michael Chandler fight, yes, it was his striking that won him the fight, but it was his grappling that sort of kept him safe in that first round when he was going through hell. He got, submission finishes against Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. Like, it was his grappling that got him there. And then when you see him fight Islam Makhachev in a massive showdown, that it's kind of like, the legacy-defining moment for Oliveira. It's all come down to this. Is he going to be a chapter in the remarkable story of Islam Makhachev, or is it going to be his own story? He goes out there and he just, he puts all of his chips in his striking, and he gets knocked down. And he gets wobbled by Islam Makhachev. And then you realize that throughout all of Charles Oliveira's career, even though his striking has improved, he's just, his striking defense has never been perfect, and it always gets him clipped. And the Gaethje fight, the Poirier fight, he's knocked down and almost finished in that one. The Chandler fight, he was almost finished in that one. The Chandler rematch that happened a few years later, he was almost finished in that one. I bet on him and talked about it on the podcast when he faced Mateus Gamrot most recently. That was in October of 2025. Gamrot has absolutely no hands, right? He's no threat at all on the feet. So tell me, why was I watching that fight and twitching every time they were in striking exchanges? Because Charles Oliveira keeps his hands so low. And it's one of those things that once you realize, if you rewatch that Gamrot fight and you imagine that it's a capable striker with power fighting him, there are multiple moments where you realize that Charles Oliveira probably goes to sleep. And I just can't look past that. Because when you think about Max Holloway, you still think about an elite striker. Even though he's on the tail end of his career, he is still capable of delivering knockouts against Justin Gaethje in the final second of a 25-minute fight. He's knocking down Dustin Poirier. He is, consistently been thought of as like a decision winner, minute winner, kind of accumulative damage guy. But I think that since we've seen him move up to lightweight, he has become a lot more dangerous. And I just can't see a world in which these guys fight for 25 minutes and Max Holloway doesn't land something clean on Oliveira and put him down and probably finish him. I mean, there's conversations about the grappling as well. You do have to bring that into the equation with Oliveira, but it's so hard to say for Max Holloway because he's just not faced many grapplers. I mean, you look at that record and there's nothing there that really says submission threat. So, I guess that bit's a bit of an anomaly, but I would say that, like, with this being a BMF fight, I just, I would expect Oliveira to be ready to bring violence and not come in with a grappling-based game plan. Perhaps that's a bit tinfoil hat of me, but I think Oliveira is a bit of a dog. He respects the brawl and the hustle of, being a gritty fighter. And I think he understands the assignment of this being a BMF title fight. So I think these two are just going to throw down. And I just think Max Holloway's head and shoulders better than Oliveira due to that striking defense. So as long as Oliveira's, not catching Holloway first, then I think it's a Max win for me personally. I've gone into way too much detail on that one. I do apologize. But yeah, does anyone have any contrary opinions, or are you guys siding with Holloway as well?
I really have to thank the Oliveira fans here, or the Oliveira cult, because whilst the general IQ for that cult is relatively low, they are helping, give Holloway decent odds here. I mean, minus 200 on Tapology. I don't know what it is now, but it's probably around the same. Maybe, I'm not too sure. But either way, I reckon Holloway should be more of a favorite, like minus 300. I know that sounds stupid, but I cannot see in any scenario Oliveira winning against Holloway. Oliveira's got good striking, he's got good power, sure, all that shit. But still, I feel like Holloway is going to be on top of him. He's going to be the one dealing the damage. He's going to be the one, despite his T-Rex arms, he's going to be the one landing the volume. And as Will said, Oliveira does have a high guard, but it's like hit almost. Like he did, low guard. He does raise his hands a lot, but it's very show-offy. Like it's just like a, put him up, that kind of stuff, right? It's like an uneducated guard. And I feel like in any striking scenario, Holloway is going to bless Oliveira with his punches, So I can't help but pick Holloway here. I am usually someone who always fades Oliveira anyway, so take my words with a grain of salt. But yeah, I can't see this fight going any other way other than either a late round KO from Holloway or just a decision win for Holloway if he doesn't put Oliveira away. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, I'm in accordance with both of you. I think you both made great points, and Will gave a detailed kind of account of this fight. I just think if we look at some of the stats, I like to do that, and rather than go to the UFC stats, I'm actually going to go to the record book here and point out some things. This is the featherweight all-time records. So, like wins, 20 wins at this is featherweight, by the way, not lightweight, but just making the point about Max Holloway. 20 wins at featherweight, 11 finishes. So, to your point, Will, even at featherweight, he was getting finishes, but obviously in the latter part of his featherweight career, he was fighting fighters at the top end, so he wasn't getting the finishes. He's got 9. So this is the most finishes at featherweight and the most KOs at featherweight. It's top of the rankings there. I mean, funnily enough, we have Charles Oliveira, who was obviously also a featherweight, at the most submissions. And that kind of actually, I guess, just to throw one, sort of contrarian piece there. Charles Oliveira is always a submission threat, so he only needs one opportunity. So, I mean, like you said, he's kind of gone away from his grappling. And I think when you were talking about the fights that Charles Oliveira has had, and specifically, I remember one fight, it was the Poirier fight where Poirier was getting the better of him on the feet. And what changed it was the second round where Oliveira got him to the mat and just did so much damage to him through ground and pound that in the third round, Poirier had nothing left to give. And that was that really shocking kind of reversal in fortunes through the grappling. So I think that was a really good point that you made. We just continue here through the featherweight Hall of records and Hall of Famer, like future Hall of Famer Max Holloway, 13 win streak. I mean, that's insane. I basically, what this is pointing out for me is just the greatness of Max Holloway. Total fight time is also Max Holloway. But if you look at the actual stat pages themselves, you can kind of just summarize why Max is going to be such a problem in this fight. I mean, you look at one of the key stats here is the strikes landed per minute, it's the output, right? Legendary type of output. Actually, if I'd have gone back to the record books, you'd see that he was about fourth. It was actually Billy Quarantillo who holds the record for most significant strikes per minute. The absorbed thing as well is a bit misleading because recently Max has kind of changed his approach. He's not taking as much damage, I'd say, in fights. You can contrast this with Charles Oliveira, and his output of around 3 strikes per minute, significant strikes per minute, is similar to his strikes absorbed. So that shows you, the difference on the feet between Max and Charles. We've got 7-4 and sort of 3-3. And the other key thing here is the takedown defense, right? So 83% for Max Holloway is just sublime for someone who's had as many fights as he had. Usually this stat would be, creeping down towards the 60s just purely because of the number of fights you've had. And yeah, I mean, you could argue a lot of his fights weren't against grapplers, so that's why this might be, a slightly misleading, but I think he's fought his fair share of grapplers. So yeah, in my estimation, nothing contrary to you two. I think that Max Holloway is the side. I even agree with what Josh said. I think he could look minus 300, and that the odds are being kept in check by a lot of Oliveira bettors, I guess. And I like, because of the submission threat, I can't say it's a bad idea to bet on him if you really feel he can get to the sub. I just personally I can't see it. I think the most likely end to the fight is probably, like you say, a KO TKO. And I just want to say that I was quite disappointed in Charles Oliveira's last fight against Topuria, because he said in the lead up to that, I'm going to meet him in the middle, and I'm going to go toe to toe with Topuria. And I was thinking that's not a good idea. Hopefully he's just saying that because that's what you have to say before a fight. No, but he actually did that, and it didn't end well. And he said a similar thing in the lead up to this fight. He said, if Max Holloway points in the center, I'm just going to meet him there. So I was like, I don't think that's a good idea, Charles. So yeah. What do you guys think? Is it a KO or what else could it be?
I mean, it's definitely not a sub if that's what you're talking about. But I reckon KO around 3 or 4. That's my target area, I think.
What about you, Will?
I'll go around 3. I was going to say 2 or 3, but yeah, we'll meet in the middle on 3, I guess. Then I just don't know how Oliveira survives with that striking defense. Holloway's going to ping him with something. I can see it.
I was thinking even earlier, just purely because of, like you just mentioned, the defense. I was thinking it could be round 2. I was thinking it could even be round 1. Completely depends on Charles, right? He hasn't shown that kind of fight adaptability, fight IQ that Max has as they've gotten older. So Max has become kind of more defensively sound. Charles seems to become less defensively sound. But yeah, round 3 seems like a good compromise to me. Should we move on?
Yep, sounds good.
The next fight on the card is the co-main event, Caio Borralho against Reinier Derrida. And maybe, Josh, do you want to start us here?
Yeah, when it comes down to this fight, I can't help but see RDR or Derrida as a bit of a fish out of water in the UFC, right? Like there have been moments where he has looked great, but there have been glimpses of greatness. Like he looks good, but then for the most part he looks bad. He kind of reminds me of a budget DDP in a way, Duplessis. Like he's clumsy with his striking. His kickboxing is fine, but ultimately it looks sloppy. Like he looks like, you know, those at a car sale lot. Like you can see the tube people, the inflatable tube people, like waving their arms around everywhere. I reckon he reminds me of that, and I can't help but see him look any good on the feet against Borralho. But I do want to turn your attention back to his fight against God, what's his name? Allen, yes, Brendan Allen. He looked like crap in that fight, and I know that RDL looking like crap is just him, but like this is just a special kind of crap. He was overwhelmed by Allen's takedowns. He was pretty much unable to return to the feet effectively, and he looked gassed out. And I know that he contributed that to the back-to-back fights in that year and all that stuff, because as you can see, you know, what is that, 3 fights in 2025, sure, but then again, he won those fights. So I don't know what that argument was about. Maybe it was an excuse. I don't really know. But either way, I do think that Borralho is going to be the one that can surgically take apart RDR. Borralho is wrestling offense, wrestling defense. It's going to be the prime thing here. I think that he can just find the way to defeat RDR and just pretty much defeat him. Like I can't see RDR pulling anything off here unless it's a weird KO, like a knee up the middle or a wild barrage of punches. Like Borralho is too tough. He is too intelligent. He's too systematic with his approach, and I think, you know, I think RDR is going to hit a brick wall here, and the brick wall is from Brazil. So, yeah.
But can I ask you, Josh, what you thought of Caio's last performance?
Yeah, the fight against Imavov was a bit of a interesting one, because I believe Imavov was just too quick for Borralho. I think there was a speed discrepancy there. But it also came down to Imavov's technique, right? He used a lot of teeps, he used a lot of ranged attacks, and it just really threw off the pace and the momentum of Borralho. I mean, Borralho wanted to pressure RDR, and there is a big ass ad on the screen that's taking me out of like I'm seeing just an ad, but I feel like it's okay. I feel like Imavov was just going to be too quick anyway. I mean, Borralho is fine, but he's not quick. That's the thing here, and speed is an issue. But the good thing about that is that RDR is not fast. He's just weird. So that's about it. That's all I really have for that one.
Yeah. Will, do you have any initial, like, either agreement or disagreement with what Josh has said, or?
No disagreements as such. I find this one so complicated because I just have become acutely aware that Derrida is like the highest variance guy in the UFC. And it seems really weird to me that whilst everybody has gotten their opinions of him wrong almost every time he's fought, the odds makers definitely have. As far as I'm concerned, they've only priced up one of his fights correctly once when he was like plus 130 against Whittaker. I mean, they still technically got it wrong, but it was close. He has one bad performance in the UFC, and now everyone is like, I told you so, despite the fact that we've been wrong about him like 5 times in a row. It just seems strange to me that everyone really, really bought into Derrida and allowed him to be minus 225 against Brendan Allen in a fight that stylistically was quite complicated for him. And now all of a sudden we're just like, yeah, RDR's not very good, blah, blah. Like, I know he really dropped the ball in that fight, but I'm not convinced that he is as crap as everybody seems to suddenly think he is. Whereas Borralho is completely the opposite. When you look through his career, if you could cast your mind back to what the sentiment was towards him, it was actually underwhelming. Like, yeah, he went through an incredibly good streak of wins in the UFC, but they were all underwhelming. He couldn't finish Armen Petrosian with 4 takedowns. Like that, Petrosian's not a very good grappler at all. He was really underwhelming in that he just consolidated position, did nothing with it, and just shut down his opponents. Finished Michal Alexeichuk in the second round. Like, that's easy to do. It's just grapple the guy. Abbas didn't finish him either. Abbas is like, gasses out every now and again. Paul Craig, obviously it's very easy to finish Paul Craig. Jared Cannonier, that fight was really good. But then he fought Nastadina Marvov. And I mean, I think I was on Marvov in that fight, but it was quite close. And we just saw Caio's hit the ceiling, like we were just like, okay, cool. When he has to purely strike, he's not elite. Okay. Like he's had an underwhelming performance in his last fight too. Why is everyone still believing in Borralho, but suddenly not believing in Derrida? It just seems really weird to me that people seem to have completely forgotten that Derrida is incredibly volatile and therefore dangerous, and also just not the kind of guy to fade at really steep odds. So I personally am not all in on Borralho like a lot of people seem to be, despite the fact that stylistically it looks like a good matchup for him. So yeah, I'm very cautious and wary of this one.
Yeah, and I think you're right to be. I put the odds up here. We can see that Derrida, he opened around plus 211, and I don't know what he's seeing at now. He's either at plus, I think it's a plus 235 now. So the betting public don't like Derrida. And I think the comment you made about the odds is also right, that they're never accurate, and obviously Josh already referred to DDP. I do think RDR is like very, very much a DDP type fighter who doesn't look very good but is quite effective. And yeah, concerning how I feel about this fight, because this is the one I thought about the most today or this week. I think that both these gentlemen are obviously coming off a loss, and a bad looking loss in both cases. Actually, they have kind of excuses in both cases. So with this loss to Imavov, even though he lost, I think, pretty much all the rounds of a 5-round fight, he took it on short notice, and he had to fly to Paris to fight Imavov in France. So it was a big ask. But I do like the point you made, Will, that he's always been a bit underwhelming in some of his earlier performances. And someone who's not very dangerous, right? So he hasn't got many finishes in the UFC, actually. I looked at his last 10 wins. He's got 3 finishes, and so he's got 7 decision wins. And it's the flips. It's the inverse with RDR, even though some of those last wins were actually in a different organization. He's got 7 finishes in his last 10 wins. And this last performance, you mentioned it, Josh, it was a really weird one, because I think one thing we forgot is that he dominated Brendan Allen like in the first round, took him down. Brendan Allen couldn't do anything, and he was on top of him for the whole round. And then he had some issues. He started to slow down. Eventually, he gave up on his stall at the end of the 4th round. But subsequent to that, he's talked a lot about why that was. And he said, as you already mentioned, he had a lot of fights in 2025. He didn't look after his body. He said he was overtraining. And I think it all just accumulated with 4 weight cuts. He just basically, all his diagnostics, he didn't go into detail, but he just said like his hormone levels, his lipid levels, everything was completely showing that his body had basically shut down on him. He said, like, this is quite worrying, obviously, leading up to a fight. Like, for 2 months after that fight, he couldn't like really train or do anything, couldn't even walk down the stairs without getting out of breath. So he had some serious medical issues obviously going into that fight. So I think both these gentlemen have we can kind of, I wouldn't say discount, but they have like reasonable excuses, I think, in both cases. So if we took away those losses, I still think that Borralho would be a favourite, just based upon certain stylistics. You guys already referenced it. Things that stand out for me about Borralho, obviously he's getting takedowns every fight, and he also got really good takedown defense. He kind of control where the fight takes place, and then he's got decent striking output, doesn't get hit very often, and you contrast that with Derrida. He's got worse striking, as Josh said. He's lower output, similar strikes absorbed, but the defense and the accuracy is lower than Borralho's. He just goes for more takedowns. So the path for victory for RDR is really to force this to be a gritty kind of fight where they're getting, up against the cage a lot. So if RDR is pushing Borralho against the cage, we've seen in previous fights that Borralho can be held against the cage. He's going to be smaller, actually. Sorry, I should have pointed that out on the stats page, but there's a 3-inch height advantage and reach advantage for RDR. So I think the fact that this is 3 rounds and the current odds the way they are, I think it's kind of like, from a betting perspective, it feels to me more like a dog or pass situation. I wouldn't, say that there aren't ways you can bet on Caio. You could bet Caio by decision, for instance. I think that would be the play. And yeah, from a picking perspective, I'm more than happy to pick Borralho. I just think it, like Will said, I think there's some flags here, right? Not to underestimate RDR in a 3-round fight, right? So yes, he's got gas issues, potentially just because he's too big for the weight class. I think he's fought at light heavyweight before, so I think he's a massive middleweight, and that can cause issues for anyone, right? So I think that's the watch out. It could be in a greasy situation where RDR wins the first round, just like makes it dirty. Maybe he pulls Borralho to the mat. Maybe he gets on top of Borralho. Borralho's a good grappler, so can't really assume that, but they could be a lot of cage pushing. Could just be a really grimy fight. Borralho might take over later and win, the second half of the second round and third round. I don't think you want to be taking minus 300 Borralho in a greasy 29-28 type fight. That was my main kind of like concern about this, but it does feel like pretty standard here prediction if we go Borralho decision. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I reckon it's going to be one of those fights that goes the distance. Like it's going to be grimy. It's going to be maybe a little bit slow or not so entertaining for the crowd, but stylistically, I can't help but think that this is going to be a grappling, like against the cage, control fest kind of deal.
Yeah, I agree. I think Borralho decision makes sense. One thing I will say though, just as a final point, like going back to saying that it's kind of just insane that everyone's written Derrida off all of a sudden. Like, yes, he, kind of fell apart and capitulated after a good round 1 against Allen. But like, why does nobody care about the significance of him beating Robert Whittaker over 25 minutes by decision and also winning both of the championship rounds against Robert Whittaker? Like, that is, you can't say that the guy doesn't have heart or cardio, like, or at least has like none of them. If you can do that, like, I think that winning against championship rounds Whittaker is an insanely good thing to do. So yeah, I will side with you on Borralho decision. Like, I do think it makes sense stylistically, but like, there's no way I'm gonna be putting my money on Caio here. I just smell a rat, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the odds got much wider, like plus 250 to 300, plus 300, I think sort of like have to bet RDR because 3 rounds, and he's a beast. I think, like you just mentioned, maybe I didn't really say that enough when I was speaking, but yeah, he's an absolute beast. He's a phenom on the mat. He's a finishing machine. It's like Borralho's never been finished, right? So I think that's the issue with this matchup. He's very smart, plays very safe. Against someone else, if these were the odds, pretty much anyone else in the division, I'd be looking to play RDR for sure. The reason it's difficult is because Borralho is a smooth operator. So, yeah, I think the odds are they're very, very wide for me. Not playable yet, but it's getting there. The next fight is Rob Font and Raul Rosas Jr. This is in the bantamweight division. Rob Font coming off a loss to David Martinez, who just fought at the past weekend and looked. I wouldn't say David Martinez looked great, to be honest, against Chito Vera. He's got this really like weird cadence to his bouncing. Did you guys notice that? He like bounces a lot, like at a very fast rate that I haven't really seen other fighters do. It looks like one of those bobbleheads in the car, just like constantly bobbing up and down. And also nearly got, well, I wouldn't say nearly got finished in the third round, but he was struggling in the third round, and Vera was really teeing off on him. And I don't think that's a bad loss, losing to David Martinez. He's a good fighter. And Raul Rosas just beat Vince Morales, but that wasn't a very convincing win, if I remember correctly. I think Vince gave him, 4? And it was a close fight. What do you guys think about these two fighters?
I have a special place in my heart for Rob Font this weekend, because I really pick underdogs, and I talked about this on Discord with you guys before. Like I can't help but see Font pulling off an upset here. I know that Rosas Jr. is the young gun, he is the next generation fighter and all that stuff. But when you look a little bit deeper, I feel like Rob Font can pull off a close decision fight here. When it comes down to Rob Font's takedown defense, which is going to be a bit of it's going to be a test, right? It's going to be one of those, can he defend against Rosas Jr.'s takedowns? I don't think he can, but I think he can get up a lot more than Rosas Jr. can handle. Like, I know that sounds weird, but when you watch Rob Font's counter wrestling, he does what JDM does. He uses a knee shield, and he just like creates space, and he gets the fight back to the feet. Like, it's very drilled at this point in his career. And I feel like even if Rosas Jr. can get him to the ground, Font's gonna take a few seconds to gather himself and then get back to the feet. And whatever happens on the feet, that's Rob Font's territory right there. Rosas Jr.'s striking is, I don't want to say crap, because I've said crap many times today, but it's rudimentary. It's very much a wrestler's kind of striking. Like, he punches, but then he goes for a takedown. It's very distracting in a way. So I can't take Rosas Jr. here as much as my favorite heavy pick Hart wants to. I think we are going to see a much closer fight than the odds are gonna probably dictate. Maybe. I just, I don't know. It's like an itchy feeling in my brain that Rob Font's gonna pull off an upset here. The other thing that kind of leads me to that conclusion is that Rosas Jr. doesn't change his style that much. He is very easy to read, and if all Rob Font has to do is defend takedowns, he's gonna just focus on that, because there's no threat on the feet. There's no real chance that Rosas Jr. is gonna land a overhand right or left and clip Rob Font on the chin, because Rob Font's boxing defense is already good. I just feel like Rob Font's gonna beat him to the punch and maybe win. Like, I'm not fully sold on Rob Font winning here, but out of all the underdogs on this card, Rob Font is screaming at me right now. It's loud and proud, and yeah. Yeah, that's my haphazard ramble. What about you?
Yeah, I think I can see where you're coming from. I guess one thing that concerns me here, and it's just this line here. I don't know what you think about this, Josh. I mean, 38 years and 8 months for Rob Font at bantamweight, and you mentioned his rudimentary striking, but to be fair, I mean, he's 21 years old. He's a baby, isn't he? So he could get better at striking. I think we got to discount him somewhat. He's fighting men. He's been a boy. He's still a boy.
Yeah, I mean, as for the age, I feel like that's just 17 years of experience for Rob, right? Like, that's the way that I see it. Maybe it's too blindfolded, but that's, yeah. I'm gonna if Rosas Jr. wins, I'm gonna get my ass chewed out. But yeah, that's my go-to.
Well, this is the second fight I was thinking about today, and I haven't like taped it extensively, but I was thinking, you know, that Rob Font's going to struggle here because like Matsumoto, who's not known to be a strong wrestler or grappler, took him down 7 times, and the reason it was a split is as you mentioned, got him back to his feet. He's good at getting back to his feet, but I just don't think Kyler Phillips or John Matsumoto have the kind of control that Rosas has, and I think that Rosas is probably, looking at this list here, going to be the best grappler that he's faced. I think that's fair to say. He's mainly, you know, facing strikers: Yanez, Vera, Aldo, Garbrandt. Garbrandt took him down 3 times. Sorry, I don't know why I keep skipping around. I just think my mouse is sensitive. I didn't realize Marlon Moraes took him down. I mean, everyone's taking him down basically, except David Martinez, who actually shot on Cheeto. So, yeah, I think that's an issue. And I think Sandhagen took him down 7 times. I think Sandhagen was injured in this fight. This is the one where Corey Sandhagen apologized afterwards because it was such a terrible fight. He actually held... So Sandhagen held Rob Font down in every single round. I mean, I find it hard to see how Rob is going to get back up if Corey Sandhagen held him down for 4 minutes, 41 seconds in not just 1, but 2 rounds, 3:43. My God, this is terrible. 3:50. That was a terrible fight. Like most of the time was spent on the mat with Corey doing nothing. But yeah, like I said, I think, you know, not total control time for Corey Sandhagen, 20 minutes almost of a 25-minute fight. And I think Raul Rosas is a better grappler than Sandhagen. So I think that there's a potential here for Rob Font not only to be grappled, but depending on if he wants to take risks or not, for Raul Rosas to finish Rob Font. And I think the UFC want that as well, because that's what they like to do, feed the old to the young. And he's very young, so that would be my main concern. Yes, 17 years of experience, I agree with that, but also 17 years of wear and tear. And as we saw with Moreno, last weekend, like wear and tear, you know, unfortunately, comes back to bite you. And Moreno is only 32, so I think Rob Font is going well at his age. I think this is where the rubber meets the road for him. I think it's going to be like a round 1 or 2. It could be a KO or a sub. If it could be a KO if Raul Rosas gets dominant top position or the back, or you know, like a Tatsuro Taira type finish where Rob's just in a bad position he can't get out of. But that's the way I see it. So we're kind of on opposite ends here. Will, what's your take? You'll be the deciding factor here, I think.
Well, funnily enough, we've got opinions on either side, and I just wanted to sit firmly in the middle. So I don't know if I can bring you that. I think this one is entirely based upon just what conclusion you come to based off what you decide to latch onto when you watch tape, because I went into this one thinking that Raul Rosas is going to destroy Rob Font, because the one performance that sticks in my mind was that Corey Sandhagen fight, where Sandhagen was averaging like 3.5 minutes of top control time per takedown. That's criminal. You're not going to beat Raul Rosas Jr. if you've got no takedown defense and you're giving up 3.5 minutes every time you get put on the ground. But then you also consider the other performances against Matsumoto and Kyler Phillips, who both did land takedowns, and then I think averaged like just over a minute of control time per takedown each. It just depends on which version of Rob Font you're getting, and I personally find myself unable to figure out if it's going to be a Corey Sandhagen type fight or if it's going to be a Kyler Phillips type fight. I will say that Raul Rosas Jr., again, like, because he's like 21 years old, it's so hard to look at his previous fights and circle something and go, this is a habitual issue of his that he'll never fix, because he's so young that he's just developing, and he can fix any problems in his game. And the one thing that does stand out is the only loss he's had in his career to Christian Rodrigues, which followed a very similar script to how Rob Font bettors think that this one can go, in that Rosas took Rodrigues down 3 times, I think, in the first round, had 4 minutes of top control time. It probably looked like a great round 1 for Raul Rosas Jr., but then we got to the second round and his takedowns weren't so sharp and he went 0 for 5. And then in the third round, he was even more tired and he went 0 for 3. And he lost the fight himself in that regard because he just sort of was too front loaded. I don't know if that's going to happen here, but Rob Font definitely has better cardio and he has shown good get-ups before. If he's capable of getting up from Raul Rosas Jr., if we knew that for a fact, Rob Font is in for a very good fight. So it's one of those complicated ones where Josh either looks like a hero or a dickhead, basically, based upon his prediction that Rob Font's going to spring the upset, because it's like I absolutely see a world where he's correct, but I also see a world where, unfortunately, Rob Font gets used like a mop. So yeah, it could go either way. I really do not know. I will give Raul Rosas Jr. the benefit of the doubt because he's young and therefore can make improvements. But like, I would only ever want to bet Rob Font here from the betting perspective. But I will side with Raul Rosas Jr. because I'm a fraud and I just back the favorite when I don't know what to do.
Well, that was very non-committal on the side of Rosas Jr. I guess we'll find out soon enough. And yeah, I mean, I'm a dog picker, although it seems like I'm mainly just picking favourites these days. So I don't know what's happened to us, Josh, with reverse roles. I do agree with the points that you guys have made about Rob Font. If he's going to get this, if he's going to keep it standing, it's quite simply a Rob Font win. I just don't see it playing out that way, which is the issue really. As I mentioned, I don't think Matsumoto or even Phillips have the grappling chops of Rosas Jr. But I'm happy to be proven wrong if it turns out differently. And Josh, you said if it's going to be that way, it will be a decision, right?
Yeah, but I do want to kind of raise a question here. Like, this is something I tried to look into, but I couldn't really find any information on. Maybe you guys know the answer. Rosas Jr. was injured last year, I believe. He had a fight scheduled and was cancelled. Does anyone know the nature of the injury, or is it still undisclosed for now?
Which fight was that? Let's have a look.
This is his last one, I think. I think it was against.
Oh, it was Rob Font.
Yeah.
Just says cancelled here. I don't know the nature of the injury. Oh yeah, Rosas withdrew. No, I don't know why that was. That is unusual.
Because I feel like that's probably irrelevant. Maybe I know that younger people regenerate quicker and all that stuff, but I don't know. Maybe I'm making up excuses here. I don't know. I'm just going to keep quiet.
Didn't you think it was interesting that he wasn't on the Mexico card as well, given that he's Mexican? So I thought that was another interesting. It could be that he was injured and he needed a certain amount of recovery time, that they couldn't make it in time for the Mexico card, right?
Yeah, because my logic here is that if he had a knee injury or something that's lower half of his body, it's gonna impact his ability to wrestle, because we all hear about a wrestler's knee giving way, Kamaru Usman or whatever. I just think that injury raises a big old question mark. What the hell did he go through? Was it hemorrhoids? What are we talking about here?
I can tell you.
It's fine.
I've Googled it.
Okay.
It was not hemorrhoids, and it was not a knee injury. It was a rib injury. He said that he injured his rib in training when somebody had his back with a locked-in body triangle, and he was trying to escape by spinning away, and he pulled it. So, rib.
Yeah, that's not too bad then. It's unusual, but that's okay. Well, I rescind my last concern. Let's just go with a Rosas Jr. decision.
Yeah, sorry about that, Josh. But
it's all right.
It's only a prediction. Anything can happen. It's a fight. So, right, we're making good progress here. We wanted to cover off these last two fights. So Dober and Johnson. Do one of you guys have a lean here?
No, I do not. But I could try and break it down for you. It's a fight that would have been very exciting a few years ago, and whilst it's still exciting now, and it should be a competitive brawl. It's two guys who are damaged goods, isn't it? And it's therefore just not. It's not a high quality fight. Both guys have definitely aged, and I think Michael Johnson has aged more in like literal age, whereas Drew Dober has aged in terms of performance, if that makes sense. So, minute by minute, I think Michael Johnson is still the better fighter. I think he still has that speed, which is insane considering he's nearly 40 and he's like still one of the quickest dudes in the division. And he put in a really good display in his last fight against Daniel Zellhuber. I mean, it's kind of interesting that win hasn't aged very well now that we've seen Bobby Green do the same thing. But I still think Michael Johnson and Bobby Green are decent strikers. And that doesn't mean Zellhuber's rubbish that he lost to them both, I don't think. Michael Johnson, it's impossible for me to talk about the man without going down the same spiel that he has a unique ability that no one has ever seen before in the UFC, quite like him, in that he will self-destruct at any given moment. I went through like all of his UFC fights from like now to 2018 or something, like literally his last like 19 fights or something, and the only time that he has been soundly beaten minute by minute against somebody was weirdly against Clay Guida. Every other loss, he either gets like sparked out and like detonated in a fight that he was winning before that, or he wins the fight himself. So, I still think that Michael Johnson is actually like a very elite minute by minute fighter, and also a power puncher himself. He has power and can finish fights if he wants to. So I see more reasons to be giving Michael Johnson the benefit of the doubt. Whereas Drew Dober, whilst he has always been a striker I've respected and one that I've liked, he could barely get it over the line against Kyle Prepolek in his last fight. And there's just a lot of things to be sketched out about when it comes to Drew Dober. He looks obviously, regressed in that he is getting finished now, which was never the case with him. He used to have an absolutely elite chin. To the point where he wouldn't even get knocked down. I think Terrence McKinney was the first fighter in the UFC to knock him down, and he must have fought at least like 15 times by that point. And then Matt Frivola was the first one to knock him out. And then, he does like 20 fights where he doesn't get knocked out, and then he gets finished 3 times in the span of 5 fights following that. So there's definitely some sort of regression in both durability, but also just performance, because, if someone had have told you 7 years ago that Kyle Prepolek would give Drew Dober a run for his money, you would laugh your ass off. Like, it's just not. That shouldn't be happening to him. So yeah, in short, I think either guy's capable of knocking the other one out, and so from a finishing perspective, it's almost a coin flip in my opinion, because both men are chinny and can get KO'd in the blink of an eye. But then if we don't get a knockout, I think Michael Johnson shows himself to be the superior minute by minute guy. So that to me kind of sounds like a 60-40% kind of fight in favor of Michael Johnson, which I think is where the betting line currently sits. So to me, it's not, oh, wow, look at that, we've got to pick him. Just like that, the odds have moved a fair amount. That interests me now, because I think Michael Johnson clearly deserves the nod and should be the favorite here. So what do I know?
Well, Josh and I were talking about this before we came on, and I was saying this feels like a 50-50 fight, and Josh, you were saying that you liked Michael Johnson as well here, right?
Yeah, because there is one particular stat that really blows my mind, and that's if you look at Drew Dober's UFC stats page, the strikes landed per minute and the strikes absorbed per minute is nearly identical. How often do you see that? How often do you see like a 0.18 difference there? That's so crazy, and it pretty much tells a story here, right? Like he goes into fights with no fucks to give about his defense. He just throws and goes, right? And in that kind of style fight, I have to give it to the sharper striker in Johnson. I know that Johnson's nearly 40. He's reaching that golden stage in his career where he can hang the gloves up and walk away or wobble away because his knees are shot. I don't know. But I think that we're going to see a repeat of the Zellhuber fight where Johnson's speed outmatches Dober's punching power. And I think the 3 inches in reach is going to be marginal. I mean, it is pretty much marginal there. Like it's a small advantage, but it's going to be crap, I forgot the word. noticeable because Johnson's punches aren't hooks, whereas Dober's is kind of like a swinging kind of fighter. So Johnson's sharper striking is going to be put on full display because of that extra inch or 3 inch in reach. And yeah, I can't see any other result other than a Johnson TKO maybe, like, or at least a decision in which Dober is a bloodied mess, because Dober has a lot of scar tissue. He bleeds a lot, he gets bruised a lot, he gets battered all the time, and to the judges that matters because they can only see the damage. They judge off the damage, right? The visuals. And so either way, I think Johnson at those odds, what was like minus 117 or whatever, like yeah, fuck yeah. That's my case with Johnson right there. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, like I said, I hadn't really given this a great deal of thought. I just saw the odds, saw that we like pick him, and thought, yeah, sounds about right, because Dober hits hard, I guess. But no, listening to you guys talk, I see your point. I really think that, and also notice here the reach advantage that's going to help to keep the power puncher at bay, height and reach, and actually the age difference is not so much, is it really? 86 versus 88, and I think if you look at the wins and losses, Michael Johnson has a win over Dustin Poirier, which is quite impressive, isn't it? It was back in the day, but he knocked him down. Or he finished him. Yeah, he's got a win over Barboza. He is the definition of a Mercurial, isn't he? Win over Tony Ferguson as well. Wow. And then, he's lost to, I think there's no shame losing to like Nate Diaz, Dariush, Gaethje, Khabib, Elkins. That's a bit weird. He lost to Emmett. God, he's had so many fights. He lost to Moises. But recently he's on this 3 fight.
Like, yeah. If I could just interject, he was 2 rounds up against Emmett and just got blasted in the last minute. He's 10-8'd Moises in the first round and then got leg locked 25 seconds into the second round. Like he wins more minutes than he loses in every loss. He just gets shut out like in a second. It's so weird.
Yeah, I bet on Diego Ferreira here as well, and he was losing that fight as well. I mean, Michael Johnson was winning that fight, and Diego Ferreira was losing it until it was over. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that he's going to be the superior minute winner. I think Pick'em doesn't capture that minute winning upside, so I think it's Dober is KO or bust here. So yeah, I like that. I like that. The money line. We found a money line which I think holds some value. I guess we have to go with TKO, right? Because I think Dober has been how many knockouts has he suffered recently? It's quite a lot, I think. Let's have a look. In his last, he got knocked down, I think, against Prepelec as well, right? So that wasn't recorded actually, but he was wobbled, I think, by Prepelec. Not knocked down. No knockdown recorded, but I seem to remember there was a knockdown. It could be one of these weird ones where he bounced straight back up. Yeah, he was killed by Manuel Torres. He was killed by John Silva, and he had a bloody war with Moicano. So yeah, he was on a 3-loss streak until he struggled against Prepelec, who was a last-minute replacement, right, in Canada. So yeah, I'm kind of confused by this odds movement. But yeah, let's what do you guys think? Take the KO TKO round 1?
I reckon we'll go for like a round 2. I reckon he can survive the first round. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, round 2. Is that okay with you, Will?
Yeah, I feel like it's more leaning towards a decision, but I get it. I absolutely understand. So yeah, to go with that.
Yeah, it could be a decision. I mean, he went to decision with Moicano, right? And I think it could be either. Maybe the round 3/decision prop would be one to think about as well if you like that angle. Okay, let's go into our last fight on the main card. It is Gregory Rodrigues against Bruno Ferreira. This is a rematch. So these guys fought a while ago. Let's go into the Hulk's record first. Bruno Ferreira, the Hulk, he fought Gregory Rodrigues. It wasn't that long ago. 2023. It was his first fight in the UFC coming off Dana White's Contender Series. So no one really knew who he was. And I think he was a big underdog in this fight. And he won via first round left hook, I think it was a left overhand. And yeah, I think again this is a interesting fight because I think he's an underdog here as well. If I'm not mistaken, he's quite a big underdog, yeah, plus 170. So the books don't really count that win very highly, or they basically count the current form of Gregory Rodrigues in higher standing. So Rodrigues is on a bit of a tear, if I'm not mistaken. Well, he's got a 9-3 UFC record, which is fantastic. And he beat Kopilov and Hermansson after he lost to Jared Cannonier and Bruno Ferreira. The last three. Let's have a look at Bruno Ferreira. He's got a good record as well in the UFC, 6-2. Oh yeah, he fought Vittori, that's right. I think, Will, you called that one, right? It was a close fight. He missed weight, which was unusual. I think he came in at 189 last weigh-in. Does it have it here? I think he was overweight by quite a lot for that fight. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a strong read here. Do either of you guys have a side that you like in this fight?
Yeah, I feel like as long as RoboCop can take the fight to the second or third round, his chances to win explode positively, right? Ferreira is historically a first round finisher. He has hit like the third round before or the second round before, but it's rare and it rarely goes his way. I just feel like this is a fight for the fans. Like I can hear Joe Rogan creaming his pants every time my punch lands or whatever, right? It's going to be one of those titans, not going at it kind of fights, and I love that shit. Like I am a fan of just stupid people punching each other all the time. It's great. But like I have to go to the predictions, and I think Rodrigues is gonna get a win back from his first loss or from the first fight. I just can't trust someone who has historically dwindles after the first round. It's a weird thing to see in the UFC, and yeah, that's my very short ass breakdown. What about you, Will?
He's not big as well, right? Is he, Josh? He's not a big middleweight, so it's weird that he can't make weight and keeps gassing.
It's probably the Brazilian food, dude. Like they eat so well.
It's all about Brazilian steak.
Yeah, this is one of those fights where I'm very much led by the betting odds. I personally think this fight took place recently enough, and the issues at play and the strengths and weaknesses at play are still identical. So I think that knowing Bruno Ferreira has a round 1 KO victory over Gregory Rodrigues is very significant here. I was one of the people who bet Gregory Rodrigues in that first fight because, I mean, my opinion hasn't really changed, but like Bruno Ferreira is not the most impressive mixed martial artist across like a minute by minute spectrum. So I thought that Gregory was a better MMA fighter and would have been durable enough to survive that. But durability is a funny thing because the difference between someone being tough and durable and being chinny is simply whether or not the fight gets finished, because Gregory Rodrigues has been wobbled many, many, many times in the UFC. Prior to the loss to Bruno Ferreira, he was getting hurt, not dropped, but hurt by a lot of his opponents. But then, and everyone was like, oh, fights through adversity, great durability on Gregory Rodrigues. And then he gets KO'd by Bruno Ferreira. And suddenly you're like, oh, he's actually chinny. He just didn't get finished. And to me, that is a very significant thing. And I think if you scroll up a tiny bit and look at Rodriguez's like output in fights after that Bruno Ferreira loss, he becomes much more of a grappler. Like him taking down and finishing Dennis Talulin inside 2 minutes was smart game planning, was smart usage of all of his skills. He also took Brad Tavares down twice. It's quite impressive. Christian Leroy Duncan, 4 takedowns. I feel like he basically got a wake-up call by getting KO'd by Bruno Ferreira and was like, I need to be a bit more serious about how I use all of my skills. But then the guy just loves a brawl. I mean, the Jared Cannonier fight, 2 knockdowns either side is crazy. It's very rare to see that kind of number. But then the Jack Hermansson fight, he just acknowledged that he is a Terminator, and if he doesn't respect the power coming back from him on the other side, he's just going to march you down in a swing, and that's what he did to poor Jack. But I just don't think that anything has really changed since the first fight, and I think that Rodriguez's durability is probably worse than it was. So Bruno Ferreira is live to still land that KO punch. And just as things were back in the day, like if it goes longer and it goes 15 minutes, or if, it going longer means that Rodriguez will probably mix in takedowns. Rodriguez is the better mixed martial artist and will show it across 15 minutes. It's just a case of whether or not Bruno can sort of spring the upset by KOing him. And I think when you're considering that Bruno's like plus 170, plus 180, I think it's worth a stab, because when you've got a guy who is KO or bust, what you want on the other end is a guy who's chinny. And I think that the stars have aligned on that one, that it's a good value play. So I'm on the Bruno Ferreira side, but I definitely see how he can lose. So it's going to be one of those ones where if it lands, it'll look like a genius, but if it loses, I'll probably look like an idiot. So yeah, it's kind of a tricky one for me.
No, I'm also on the Bruno Ferreira side here, in the sense that they priced his decision no action prop the same as his money line. And I think that's because Gregory Rodriguez, has a lot of finishes, but I think it's incorrect to say that the finishing is in favor of Gregory Rodriguez. I think it's the other way around. Like, I think if it's a decision fight, I agree. I think that it probably means that RoboCop has probably mixed in some grappling. I think if he's smart here, he'll mix in some grappling, and that will get him the decision win. Also, wear on the gas tank of Ferreira. Maybe he'll get a late finish, but I think that the finishing upside is more with Ferreira. He hits hard, right? And we saw that in the Vettori fight. Vettori didn't like getting hit by him. I completely, if we're going to have a pick, I'm happy to pick Rodriguez. I think he's a great fighter. But as you've already covered, the main issue with him is that he likes a war, and he has been dropped many times. He was dropped by, it doesn't show it in the stats, but he was hurt by Jun Yong Park in also another epic fight, back and forth. I think if it's going to be a finish, it's probably going to be on the Bruno side. Otherwise, I think Gregory, he's the better fighter. So I don't have a massive problem with the money lines per se. But I think that the decision no action, if you take out the decision, then I think it's more like a 50-50. So I'm not saying necessarily that Gregory can't finish Bruno, but I think it's a kind of, if I'd seen more of this black belt BJJ from Gregory in his career, but famously he never really grapples. He never uses he's got hardly submitted anyone. Has he submitted anyone in the UFC? No, he hasn't. 12 fights from this, phenom grappler. No submissions. Which says it all, right? He likes a war. So, and then we know that the Hulk likes to war too. So if it's a stand-up war, it's a 50-50. If Gregory's smart, he'll win using his smartness.
I will. Yeah. Sorry, I something popped up in my head. Gregory Rodriguez has an extensive background in grappling. He is an 8-time jiu-jitsu champion in Brazil, I think. And I believe he also trained to be an Olympic wrestler, I believe. I'm getting a lot of this from like Wikipedia, so maybe it's him writing this article because that's how Wikipedia works. So I'm taking this with like a grain of salt. But when you mentioned like if he ever grappled or submitted anyone, I had to look into it, and that's what I found out. So maybe he can rely on that if that is true.
No, I knew that he had the high accolades. No, I guess I didn't express myself properly. I meant like he is known to be a phenomenal grappler, but he doesn't use it in the UFC. That's the point. Like he's now had 12 fights. He hasn't submitted anyone because he doesn't use his grappling. It's quite frustrating. Everyone who bets on him thinks this will be the one. They bet on Rodriguez by sub because they know his background. But Gregory Rodriguez by sub has never hit. And I know people who've played it every single fight since he got into the UFC, expecting that would come to the fore. But as like Will said, it's just his penchant for swinging and swinging from the hips, swanging and banging. He just loves it. So he has shown a bit more of the sort of measuredness, but the Jared Cannonier fight was only 2 fights ago, and he just went crazy. Like, I bet on him in that fight, and he was just reckless. And Jared Cannonier took him down. Like, he should have been taking Cannonier down from the get go, and he just went to war. Now, it was great for the fans, but it was like not a good game plan. That's the only way that Jared Cannonier is going to win that fight, probably. Is if you keep it on the feet. So yeah, that was the point I was making, that he hasn't used. He might use it here. He might use his grappling. But you can't, based on historical precedent, you can't say he's going to grapple. So I don't know if he's a trustworthy bet, but certainly from a pick perspective, happy to pick him. And if we're going to pick him, how do you think he wins this fight, Josh? What do you think?
I mean, in that case, KO. I mean, as Will said, he likes war, and this fight screams war. So yeah, KO. I'd go second. I'm a very second round heavy person when it comes to finishes. So second round, I reckon.
Yeah, I would lean decision, but what about you?
I was also leaning decision as well. I think Bruno seems pretty tough, and I think that when you have firepower coming back, Gregory might not be quite so aggressive.
Yeah, let me just check Bruno Ferreira, because I think he is tough. I mean, he took some big shots from Vittori, didn't barely moved. Yeah, he in the UFC, he has been finished by KO and Saab. I'm just gonna see. Yeah, he got finished by Nursultan Ruzaboyev. That was actually the fight right after he beat Gregory Rodrigues as well. That was a really quick round 1 finish, and he got choked out by Abbas Magomedov. That's not a good look. So he has been finished. So it can be done. I think with the Abbas one, I think he gassed completely, didn't he? Which is funny, gassing against a gasser. That is Abbas. But yeah, he didn't look gassy, too gassy against Vittori, did he? In round 3, I was there in the arena. I can't really remember the fight very well. It wasn't a great fight, and he missed weight. So yeah, maybe we can write that off a little bit.
Maybe that's the trick here. Maybe if he misses weight, he'll be less gassy.
Yeah, that was a good point, actually. Maybe that's one of the reasons that he didn't gas out in that fight. So yeah, watch the scales for this one. I think we've covered all of the main card except for Cody Garbrandt. Do either of you have a quick opinion on Cody Garbrandt at this late stage of his career?
I am not too sure what the odds are, but if Cody Garbrandt is the underdog, I reckon sprinkle something on him, because I don't trust Long Zhao that much. I know that Long Zhao's been on the road to UFC. I've covered him before, but he is one of those fighters that is too chaotic for his own good. He uses his pace to overwhelm his opponents, but if Garbrandt snipes and moves around and stays away from the wrestling, he can pull this one off, I reckon.
Yeah, I didn't think about this fight much, but I'm with you on this one. Let's align on a dog pick. It will be Garbrandt. Did you say knockout? What decision?
Yeah, I reckon the knockout's gonna probably happen. Yeah, I'm not too sure what the round would be. Maybe in the last 2 rounds after defending all those takedowns, but I don't know. Will, did you look into this one?
I didn't, but I could see the side of Garbrandt. It's a massive step down in competition, and he's still capable at some things. So yeah, I guess a KO in the second half of the fight makes sense.
Let's lock it in. Yeah, so we covered all of the main card fights, and we're going to be back in a couple of days with our bets for this card and Fight Focus. That was like my weakest outro that I've ever done.